After a colossal 217 days since the end of the 2019 season, Formula 1 finally returned to action for the Austria season opener. And boy, were we glad to have it back. And with another new season is another chance to dissect the brand new additions to this year's F1 cars race by race. Although the story of the Austrian Grand Prix was one of reliability, there was still plenty of new parts to talk about. And today, we'll be focusing on the race-winning Mercedes W11. Having dominated the practice sessions, race winner Valtteri Bottas and Lewis Hamilton were in a class of their own at the Red Bull Ring, further extending Mercedes' advantage over the rest of the field. But before we get onto the new parts, let's address the elephant in the room, the new livery. And God, it's a stunner, isn't it? Newly re-liveried for the start of the year, the new black scheme underlines Mercedes' new commitment to improve the representation of black and minority ethnic individuals within the team, added to a message to end racism. The wing mirrors also show Formula One's We Race as One initiative, which also aims to fight racism and inequality, along with the current global threat of COVID-19. But there's another new colour on this year's Mercedes too. The front wing and the air intake now have the addition of a burgundy streak, complete with the Ineos logo. The new partnership deal with the petrochemicals company is thought to be worth up to £100 million over 5 years. The logo also features on the back of the rear wing, as Mercedes has further secured its long-term future. And, of course, the livery retains the single red arrow, in tribute to the late Niki Lauda. But you're not here for a critical review of the livery, you're here for upgrades, and there's a few worth talking about on the W11. Let's do the opposite of what we usually do. Let's start at the back and work our way forwards. The team had brought a new rear wing end plate to bolster its already impressive package, shuffling the strakes further forward to create a more gradual transition to bring airflow outwards. The end plate is heavily rooted in the design that the team had last year, retaining the squared off rear section to control where the airflow is released from the back of the car. Those strakes assist with turning airflow outwards, linking up with the rest of the aero at the back of the car. As a result, the car's diffuser has a bigger effective volume as the low pressure zone behind the car, which increases the suction of the floor, is increased. Mercedes also made a change to the rear wing mounting, having experimented with it in testing at Barcelona. There, the W11 ran with a single central pillar on the rear wing, having found enough strength in the design to withstand the aerodynamic loads it experiences. At its core, the design aims to reduce the frontal area of the car and should hence trim the overall drag to improve straight-line speed. This now blends in with the DRS actuator covering, which retains the serrated trailing edge it used last season to clean the airflow passing over it. Most teams use the twin swan neck rear wing mountings, which attach to the top of the wing, leaving the underside clear to develop a stronger suction effect to improve the overall downforce. There's also a minor change to the top plane of the rear wing, perhaps as a result of that switch to the new mounting. Furthermore, in preparation for any excess heat, Mercedes had also opened up the cooling apertures next to the halo, to cover any threat of high temperatures. Perhaps burned by last year's Austrian Grand Prix, in which the team didn't have enough latitude to cool the car in surprisingly hot temperatures, the team had to turn the engines down to counter the pervading heat that year. Although it ultimately wasn't a problem this year, the Red Bull Ring circuit can get overly warm. But there's also the 800 metre altitude that the teams have to take into account, which means that the air is marginally thinner than at sea level. This means that cooling packages have to be widened to get the right cooling requirements for the power unit. Further to the front of the car, Mercedes added a larger fin to the chassis bulkhead, which turns airflow downwards and brings it to the bargeboard area of the car. There's also a detail change to the mirror mounts, which have been tightened up a little over the course of the season. Although Mercedes' pace across the weekend was considerably greater than that of its rivals, the W11 appeared to have issues with the gearbox sensor throughout the race. Both Bottas and Hamilton were asked to avoid the curbs and drive around the problem. Both eventually got to the end of the race, but Mercedes' radio messages became more and more urgent throughout. It later emerged that the W11's current layout and the way that Mercedes runs the car develops a build-up of electrical noise, which causes problems with the data transmission of the sensor. Most sensors have some degree of failsafe, and team principal Toto Wolff admitted that any further problems could have been an instant kill for either car. Elsewhere on the grid, Red Bull did some back-to-back tests of a new nose concept, which Max Verstappen raced while Alex Albon ran the old design. Verstappen's nose is rounder in form, enabled by moving the mounting pylons to the underside, while Albon retains the squarer version throughout the weekend. Red Bull made a notable switch to a thinner nose design for 2020, enabling the team to make more use of the cape design, which has become ever more popular since Mercedes pioneered it in 2017. Renault also added new parts, changing its front wing end plates to a design not dissimilar to a Ferrari development from last year, adding a little fin to the footplate in order to help turn airflow outwards. This came along with a square cutout and a new top wing flap to enhance that outwash effect. With news that Ferrari will fast-track some of its Hungary updates for next week, we may be looking at the red cars after the Styrian Grand Prix.